So we kind of make sure that everything is in one place and accessible to the level of detail that different people need it. Everybody's complaining nonetheless, but that's just that whenever there's a roadmap, people will be complaining. That's just a fact of life that I've come to accept.
Welcome to Talking Roadmap Season 2, where we're here talking about product operations. Today, I'm joined by Valentina. Valentina, we found ourselves working together at ZF with me taking a job recently. I'd love to know, to just introduce yourself, though, and tell us more about what you're doing in the product operations space.
I work in one of the software, let's call it software bets of ZF. So it's kind of a small division, 700 people, and we are building the new orchestration platform that helps fleets to manage all of their assets and their missions. Personally, I'm doing product excellence. Why do we call it product excellence? Because product operations in a manufacturing company obviously means something completely different to what it means in SaaS. So we had to invent a new name as to not confuse everybody else in ZF. So product excellence is what we call the department, but we do what product operations do, which is basically helping product managers to do the best they can with the resources that they have available, which sometimes includes training, sometimes include actually finding new tools, analyzing where are the gaps that we actually have, figuring out where are product managers at the same level, where do some maybe need more help than others. And yeah, that over 3 different business lines within this software division, and over officially 4 sites, but with several remote people adjacent to it, like satellites. So that's why I came in, because my background is product and remote, because remote operations require a little bit of an adjustment to everybody in the office operations. And that's what I've been doing the past 18 months now.
If you're enjoying the channel, subscribe, hit the bell, and give us a like. Very interesting. Yeah, I actually helped another organization rename their product operations team. They ended up at product execution as opposed to excellence. Partnered with agile delivery leads within that same function as well. So it was they needed a different name. I thought I could imagine product excellence also in ZF. I could imagine someone thinking, is that a quality function?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions. But actually, I like it when people ask the question, because there's nothing worse than assumptions in product. And that also happens for our role. So I prefer people to be confused and ask, wait, what are you actually doing? And then I can kind of set the record straight, that them assuming that I'm organizing the delivery manufacturing plant, which is not what I do.
It's really, really interesting, that kind of remote focus, because when I worked for a competitor of what you do now, that's when I started my remote journey back in 2008. So yeah, to me, it's just, I can't think of a different way of working. I would never work any other way, but I know for many it's still a COVID forced the hand of many, and it's still not really mature.
Yeah, and most don't really appreciate that remote is a different way of working. You can't just send people home with a computer, fingers crossed, and hope for the best. That's not how humans connect. And even if you have more than one site, you need your operations to be set up for a remote environment, because the people in Dublin will look at the people in Lausanne, will look at the people in Ypres in Belgium. Everybody will be like, what are these people doing over there? So unless you have some kind of mechanism to bring these thoughts together, you'll just end up with people building in isolation.
I remember when COVID hit, I actually sat down and wrote my 5 dysfunctions of remote teams. Not as a book. I didn't try and replicate Lencioni's work, but I paid a nod to Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's what are the 5 things I see going wrong in remote teams? I'm sure we could unpack that, but that's going way off piece. So let's dive into product operations then. So why do companies need it?
As soon as you have more than 2 product managers, streamlining what they do is really difficult. Let's say more than 3. Because with 3 people, they can still sit together and figure out, hey, how did you do this? What can I learn from you? Which tools have you discovered? But as soon as you scale, it becomes really, really difficult to kind of figure out who is ahead of the curve, and how can the others learn from that? Traditionally, the head of product or VP of product or whoever is at the top was supposed to do like both, having kind of the product focus, but also the managing the team, developing the team focus, and also the how to set up the operations. But at this point, it becomes so complex that having only one person doing this, one of those three areas is going to drop off the radar. And it hopefully is not the product area, because I mean, that's what you have the VP of product for. So the easiest, and I'm saying that in quotation mark, to kind of give to a different function is the whole operations part, because you can do a lot with looking from the sidelines, analyzing what's happening, and then figuring out how to improve the what is happening without having to influence the product itself.
Okay, so that kind of seems to suggest that the purpose of product ops then is to improve how we do product work. Is that right? Yeah. Can you unpack that a little more for me?
So I think it's like find a way to do it better, and also to do it in a more similar way, and not in terms of streamlined that everybody does the same, but and now with AI coming into product operations, we're seeing this more and more. If one person figures out, hey, this is how I've used very basic, this ChatGPT prompt has made my feature page so much more accessible for the development team. How can we make sure that this learning does not stay with this one person, but actually also reaches everybody else, and that you then have incremental learning by people actually trying out different things? Like, that's from how can we do one person learning and scale them? And then from the other side, okay, maybe the data we're looking at does not have the quality that we need to make actually informed decisions. Who's going to spearhead that? Even if it's like getting a new data tool, or getting everybody trained on the data tool that you already have, or asking the right questions of the data tool. Like, it's these kind of things that everybody knows they should be done, but nobody is really responsible. And whoever points it out knows that they will be responsible. So nobody really wants to point it out, because it means adopting more work on top of what you're already doing. So that's where we can come in and actually kind of can help to structure this, both the research in terms of what we need, but also the how do we then implement it.
You're reminding me that I need to take that system prompt I developed for Claude for helping to pull together the initiative that I did within my first couple of weeks to fit the format that the team has, and maybe share it in the broader team, because it allowed me to do it very quickly and efficiently.
And then also do a blog post about it. Yeah, well, that's when no one is ever going to find it. Do a public one, like make it, anonymize it a little bit, and then like give it to the world to to use it.
So if we're improving it, and we've already hinted at the fact that you've changed the name here. How is it set up differently? Or in fact, how is product operations set up in your team, and how have you seen it different?
I think product operations at the end of the day is different in every single company. Like, whenever I talk to another product ops person, we're both like, oh, this is interesting. This is also a way how you can approach it. And I think it mostly comes with what was the initial reason why the position was created. In my case, it was definitely okay, we have people in different places and we don't quite know how we can make them work together better. So it's kind of the remote aspect that came in, which ZF is not remote. It's actually just, okay, this is a distributed company. How can we make the work distributed and still work? And so on my team, I have one person who's basically program manager, looking at the incoming information, like working with the commercial teams, with sales teams, with customer success, to make sure that the insights that we get from the market actually read the correct product managers, or actually reach anyone for that matter. And then I have somebody who works with the engineering teams, making sure that their needs coming like towards product are met, and that they get the information they need, that the feedback loop is actually working. So basically looking into both direction and then bringing it together with the product managers. And then I have a specific person who does the same, but specifically with the marketing and the go-to-market team. So it's like really a bridge function. How can we bridge the gap and also translate? Because engineers, they speak a different language to product people and speak a completely different language compared to commercial people. So like sometimes you need somebody to like translate commercial into product into engineering so that they actually talk about the same thing.
See, that's such a weird thought process there to me, because that translation is fundamentally the heart of product work to me. Like, if I can't speak all those other, like, I expect to be in conversations with all those different teams, like, on a daily basis.
But it's one thing to be in conversations and another thing to be in meetings. And in meetings, if you and me are talking and I see that you are confused, I can kind of refine, I can give more examples, I can kind of make sure that we are on the same level. But as you scale, at some point you reach a point where there is no more time for more meetings in your calendar. So you have to go, as they say, async. Like, you have to go into the written word whether you want it or not. And that's when the translation problems happen. Because product can translate into both directions, but the other parts not necessarily.
True, very true. I mean, what I've found is increasingly product people don't translate. Like, they've got into their own language, their own domain. But I think, I'm an old school product guy from too many years ago, and that was always a core part of what I did. Like, having done sales, having done marketing, having done development, it's like that's also where I built that craft of speaking their languages. And I have noticed with the growth of product management in particular over the last 10 to 15 years, it's become a thing in its own right with its own language and more insular, less engaging with others.
Definitely. And also, like, if we look at like Scalar, our platform specifically, we have a lot of, because we are rebuilding, improving, like there was a software and we're building this new platform, but obviously a lot of pain points that the old platform solved and now also need to be solved in the new platform. But it's a new programming language. It's a new, like, the entire safety, privacy, etc. Everything is revamped. Like, everything is new on that side. So we hired a lot of new engineers and developers who have the skills that we need to build this new platform. But obviously the product people, because we need them, because they have the deep market knowledge, because they have a lot of experience. So a lot of them have actually been with the company for a long, long time, because we really, really appreciate this deep knowledge of what our customers need, where they're coming from, what the old software used to do. So they are not just kind of stuck in product, but they have known the old product for so long that they have forgotten what it is like to be somebody new. And so you get an engineer who probably never has worked in transportation, but who knows whatever language they need to use really, really well. And then there is a disconnect. And it's not because, like, it's not bad intentions or trying to not be crystal clear to somebody else. It's just different languages. And then add on top that they literally not all speak English as their first language. Like, there are several levels where you can actually get the translation completely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Germany over the years, and yeah, there are definitely cultural differences, and even just simple things like I always love a German email when it says I need this until, and it's a bad native speaking translation. It's like I'd need it by is what a native speaker would say. So you can always tell it comes from a German. And at first, when I came across those sorts of emails, it felt really aggressive, demanding, giving a date. Until I realized, actually, no, it's empowering. It's telling me when it's needed, not when to do it. And those kind of cultural differences. As a Brit, if there's no date there, we just assume it's needed right now. And that kind of cultural shift because of the different expectations, like the timeline is expected.
And also fluency. Like, when in doubt, I tend to think, okay, maybe this person just doesn't speak English as well as other people. So, like, maybe they don't know. They just say, "Can you, like, please do this," because they don't know how to say, "Would it be possible for you to maybe put all of these nice," specifically the British are really good in that. Like, they're the nice buffer words in it. So, like, kind of always add a little sprinkle of kindness yourself while you're reading it, because they probably didn't mean it like that direct.
I mean, and I'm a fairly direct Brit compared to most, so even I come across aggressive to many Brits, so it's quite amusing.
I have to say the Culture Map is one of the best books that anyone in leadership, or anyone actually who works in intercultural, you have it. I also have it. One of the most marked books that I have. It's so helpful.
I remember writing an assignment about that sort of thing in my during my MBA. Like I think it was Lost in Translation or something like that. I wrote like how, even American English versus British English and the differences. Sometimes the same two words that are closely related transpose almost in their meanings. It's quite interesting when you really spend time trying to understand it. And I guess that all comes back to that broader kind of team and cultural environment that we're trying to build excellence in.
Yeah. And I like it's one of the reasons why I like templates so much, because it helps people from different backgrounds to structure their thinking and their results in a way that is then legible for everybody else. Like if we look in the culture map, there are some cultures who like they need to understand the background first. Like unless you have calculated pi yourself, you do not believe that this is what you use to calculate the radius. And then there are other cultures who are like, okay, I guess this is what it is, and I'll use it. Like more pragmatic approach. So if you have like a kind of a template where you can bridge this, okay, explain me why you want to do this, but also how would you apply this? You kind of can shortcut a lot of the conversations that otherwise just go in circles.
I'm generally a big fan of templates as well. If for no other reason than it gets past the blank page, like it's often much easier to fill one section than start with an empty page and figure out what is it I need to do here. But then sometimes, and this is one of the things that's leveraged as a criticism often against product operations, it gets hit with the dreaded P word of process.
Well, I mean, I have a process even to stack the dishwasher.
I think it's John Cutler who said a few years ago, your process exists whether you acknowledge it or codify it. It's there. It's how you get things done. So it's better to actually give it some conscious thought.
Yeah, it's a bit like if you want to think outside the box, you need a box first. So I create the box, and then if anybody has a good reason to do it differently, that is totally fine, but they better have a good reason. And maybe the reason is so good that we then change the process. Because it's not, we are not putting it into stone. At the end of the day, it's a suggestion, because, I mean, any process you create doesn't survive the impact with reality, because that's just how it works. And then you learn and you adjust. And I think often we forget the learn and adjust part, because creating something new is kind of more exciting than actually review and redo something that you have already checked as done in your like to-do list. But then again, that's agile. Like review, see what works, see what doesn't work, and iterate and go back and do it again.
I do love how, as a German, you just quoted von Moltke the Elder as well, or paraphrasing. But yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. And kind of, I mean, I think it was one of my first product management leader bosses. He said to me many years ago, good process shouldn't get in the way of good work or good business. And to me, that's always stuck with me as a fundamental foundation of how we do our work. Yes, there is a process, but if there's a good reason to go to do something different, we should, because if it's about doing the right things, not about
but it's the good reason, because a lot of people who hate process just hate process because it's process. And if you don't have any process, that doesn't mean automatically you get good work done. Very often you just get crap work done.
And so, okay, we're creating that frame or that box through product operations. So put a bit more sort of flesh on the bone for me here. What are the key responsibilities of product operations?
Awareness building. There's a lot of kind of coaching, not in terms of personal, I'm helping you with your career coaching. That for me is something that the direct manager is responsible for, but definitely for specific skill coaching, skills that are used for this job in this situation right now. And I think it very much depends on the company that you're working with and the homogeneity or lack of that of the product managers that you're kind of responsible for from the sidelines. Because if you are in a startup, for example, at the end of the day, most profiles tend to be fairly similar. On the younger side, experience in SaaS, probably white and male most of the time. So it's kind of easier to manage that because you don't have many different profiles there. If you go into a multinational company and then you have like this little software bet on the side, and then we have somebody who was hired a year ago and somebody who was hired 20 years ago. Definitely not the same experience with modern software theories. And it's an interesting challenge because I my background is a startup. And then like it's very interesting because it's very different. And I had to relearn asking myself, is this an assumption or is this actually fact? Because I assumed so many things. Just because somebody is a product manager doesn't mean that they are the type of product manager that I might envision when I think product manager. So like doing this initial, okay, so what is your hands-on experience with the product that you're managing? Like, are you actually managing a product or just a part of the product? Like understanding this world took a good part of like the first 6 to maybe even 12 months. And still, like I have a reminder in my computer that comes up from time to time, which assumptions are you running on that actually need to be verified?
And so, I mean, you're clearly identifying a key relationship there of product management and product operations working together.
Yeah, product management is the product of product operations. So you can use exactly the same methods that you would use in product management, but then you use the product product managers are kind of your customers. And then the product management practice is what you're trying to improve and to deliver.
And so do you find that there's ever any sort of friction or overlap there between like the product operations people and the product managers essentially being, sounds like almost being told how to do their work?
I have gotten a lot of pushback because we are essentially asking people to write stuff down. But that is because historically, how things were done was through meetings. And because the legacy software came in through an acquisition, obviously that part of the company was a lot smaller and they were all in the same location. So it was actually feasible to just have meetings and do things. But now we have developers in Ireland, we have developers in India. Like even the time zones don't overlap. So we cannot do meetings all the time. And I know that a lot of our Indian colleagues, they go to meetings even though for them it's like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. And that's something that I don't want. Like no one should be in a meeting at 9 p.m. just because they are in the wrong time zone. Wrong in terms of where the current action actually is from product management. So it's kind of, they need to learn how to write things down, and we are experimenting with a lot of like how can we create prompts that help them fill in the feature page so that they just have to read and kind of review and don't have to come up with the words themselves. Because I also understand that not everybody enjoys writing or is naturally good at writing. Writing gets better through writing. It's definitely a learnable skill, but it also not necessarily a skill that everybody wants to learn, because maybe only for that it's not good enough. So how can we actually help them to put their thoughts on paper, well, on Confluence, so that it can then be used by other people without having a meeting with 25 people? Like this whole, we can do the meeting remote. The meeting room does not have any capacity problems. So we're going to invite 35 people. And like, it drives me crazy, because if you are in an office, you would not invite 35 people to a random status update meeting.
The way I found to sometimes help with that is do a quick calculation of what that meeting just cost. I did that way before we had video meetings. I remember sitting there and thinking, we just spent close to 10 grand on that meeting.
Yeah, and the outcome was that we need another meeting to actually make a decision. Great.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, and I've seen some similar things in terms of sometimes the only place I can get action right now is in a meeting. It's like I've sent a bunch of things asynchronously. It's like, so you can think about it in your own time. And I'm now sitting there twiddling my thumbs. It's like, is anyone actually going to respond to these?
I have booked meetings into calendars of people so they can think about the questions that I ask them, putting into the invite, I'm not going to show up at the end of this hour. Please just send me an email with your thoughts. That works surprisingly well, because people usually underestimate that in order to think, you actually need time in between meetings. Like you cannot think and be in the meeting at the same time. So like sometimes you have to kind of help people, because if I book the meeting into their calendar, I know that no one else is going to book over it. So I'm kind of giving them the excuse to actually be there half an hour or whatever and think about this and then answer back to me. So sometimes, I mean, they could probably block it in their own calendar as well, but not everybody feels like they can do that.
So we've got product ops. They're working with product managers. You've mentioned a program manager in there. You mentioned someone who's working with development. You've mentioned someone who's working with go-to-market. What sort of background makes a good product ops person?
I believe you should have worked in product in some kind of capacity, so that you actually understand what you're trying to optimize. And most product ops that I know actually do have a product background, like either product manager or head of. My previous position was head of product at a startup, and I optimized the heck out of everything there as well. So it's something that I like. I solve problems. And then customer success. I've also seen some people transition into the product part, and usually because they are so frustrated with product not doing what customer success wants that they feel like they can do it better. And then once you're inside, you realize, oh, holy shit, there was a reason why not everything was as fast as I wanted it to be. But it's I think it's a very interesting role because you can shape it very much into what you want it to be. So it's kind of a combination between what are the skills that you're bringing to the table. And I think analytical skills, being able to succinctly explain what the problem is, and also helping other people to grow. It's independent of whether you are like a product person or an engineer or whatever. Like, you can learn these skills, and once you have them, you can apply them anywhere. And then it depends, like, what does the company need and how can you match your skills with that. And I say my background is product, but like, I studied political science. No, it's basically seeing big frameworks, connecting the dots, and then making the best decision, and reviewing what is actually, do I assume people are bad or good? And it changes from day to day. But like, it kind of this questioning your own assumptions, that is something that you learn in a lot of philosophical careers. So I don't go into the interview with that background, but it really helps to have like a more of a bigger background.
Interesting. Oh, that's an interesting background. Yes, because I came through that engineering route into products, having had a managing director who was a product manager back in the 80s, who kind of brought product ways of thinking just throughout our company. And then we were acquired, and someone from the senior leadership team needed to become the first product manager. That was me. And then found very much my home, and I've tried to stay in the product space ever since then, with a few deviations into some sales and some marketing and this sort of thing. But I've always considered that cross-training quite useful because of the ability to speak the other languages and understand and empathize. Essentially, what I want to do with my customers, I built an element of with all the different functions at earlier points in my career.
Yeah, and I think it's like this also kind of teaches you to think about what is in for the other person. Why would the other person want to change? Because I know why I want them to change, but unless there's like a really good motivation for them to also change, it's a really hard sell.
So let's switch gears a little bit. What do you consider to be best, or sometimes that's a loaded term, good practice when it comes to product operations?
Visibility and accountability. And that is, I think, good practice for product managers just as well as for product operations. But product operations, because it's not quite clear what that actually is, because it's a relatively new function. It's kind of showing what we are doing and kind of showing what we are learning, because a lot of product operations is kind of trying things out and then they don't work, and then you try something different until you find something that works. But kind of showing the things that don't work, I think is just as important as showing the things that do work, or showing the things that only work for specific people, and that is fine too. But kind of showing this entire mosaic basically of different options that there are. Because otherwise it's like, especially if you're in a remote setting, it's like, what are they doing the entire day?
I mean, I think the same is true for product management. As you say, we have come up with a lot of hypotheses. We run a lot of experiments or do a lot of discovery, and a bunch of it leads to nothing, or at least learning that it's the wrong thing to do. And a lot of people just kind of put that in a box and hide it away. And then the comments come that, oh, you're really slow. You're doing all this discovery. You're not delivering anything. It's like, well, actually, what we did is we delivered this learning that enabled us to say that's the wrong thing to do. We should do something different.
And it's very important, because if you don't visualize the things that didn't work, you're going to do the same discovery next year all over again to come to exactly the same outcome, because no one knew that you had already gone down that rabbit hole. And the other way around, maybe 5 years from now, you're like, okay, when we looked at this in 2020, it did not work, but now there's new technology, like the market has changed, there's no tariffs from the US. So like, how maybe we have to unpack this again and look at it like from this different angle. But you can only do that if you know what you looked at back then, which obviously also means document your decisions.
It's an unpopular one with engineers. Nobody really likes to write things down, but yes.
And then they always go with, yeah, can we just record this meeting? I don't know how much time people have to actually watch recordings. It's really nice that you're now giving me, I'm coming back from vacation and I have now access to 25 meetings that were recorded. Just give me a summary.
The recording and then a bit of sprinkling a little bit of AI to get a good summary can be an efficiency saver.
But that was invented a year ago or something. It's not something that was widely available, and it's getting better. Still, somebody has to check the summary of the recording, specifically if you had non-native speakers on that call, because otherwise accidentally and I don't know a lot of people who actually check the AI summary and make sure that it's accurate. And you can introduce a lot of wrong decisions or wrong data through bad AI.
It's very, very true. I do, prior to joining ZF, I was using Fathom mostly, which I found was better than most. I've heard really good things about Granola recently as well. But instead of using the auto-generated summaries, what I always did was still create my own summary, but it has, most of these AI tools nowadays will have a prompt where you can treat it like you can interrogate the meeting, like you can interrogate the text. And Fathom, for example, would bring also the snippets where it was pulling the data from, and then you could go and play the short snippet, and that allowed a very quick inspection of what was going on. I've done similar things with taking transcripts and feeding them into GPT and Claude over the years as well, because Claude typically, I found, will hallucinate a lot less than the other platforms.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Which is quite useful in that respect. But even still, there's misinterpretation and so on.
But to be honest, if you can't summarize the meeting you just were in...
Depends how long they are. Sometimes they're too long. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, but then that is a good moment to look at, why are we having this meeting? Is there a way that we can shorten it? Is there a way that we can kind of front load some of the prep work? And I know people also hate prep work, but sometimes, very unpopular opinion, they are paying you to write things down and read stuff. It's totally fine if, as a manager, you expect people to come prepared to a meeting. I don't think that is out of this world.
I'm also a fan of turning meetings more into workshops as well. So spinning up a Miro or Mural or something like that board to capture a note as you go, and that becomes your summary almost as well, because you've got a relatively succinct board to work on. Or
if you already have an assumption at the very beginning, use the first 10 minutes, tell everybody, hey, here's the document, get off video. When you're done reading, put on your video so that I have a visual indication of who is done reading, and then we can start the conversation.
Yeah, I've used that reading in particular with execs. I find that that's a useful technique because they just don't have the time to do the pre-read, but they're hungry to have the facts before they have the conversation. And so giving them that, Amazon style kind of memo at the start can work really effectively. So Valentina, what do you think is the biggest mistake people make in terms of setting up or running product operations?
Probably doing it too late, which I think is the same with what's the worst mistake when hiring the second product manager. You're doing it too late. And not having clear, I think it's a great role to find somebody who's kind of an all-rounder and who can help shape the role. But I do think that the pain points need to be really, really clear before you hire, so that you hire somebody who can actually help with those pain points. For example, right now, the roadmap is mostly driven by engineering because they are the ones who have to kind of organize 27,000 people. Well, 350, but they have to organize all their teams. And because we are in the middle of migrating people from one platform to the other, there is not that much of a strategic decision from a product point of view, but rather from engineering, what does make sense to build more. So if you now get somebody in who's a roadmap wizard that might actually not be what you need at that moment. So what's the pain and what do you want to solve? Because the clearer you can be with that, the easier it is to find somebody who matches that.
Interesting. And that's actually a perfect segue to, the channel's called Talking Roadmaps. So I always have to ask, what product operations involvement with road mapping?
So it's a tool thing, to be honest. So how can you make sure that whatever roadmap, and whether it's product or engineering, or in some places it's the commercial part of the organization who basically drives the roadmap through sales requests, whatever it is, like how can you make sure that it's in one place, that it's visible for everybody, and that it's accessible from different functions so that they actually talk about the same thing? Because as soon as you have like 3 different versions of the roadmap, and I don't mean different levels of detail, but like 3 completely different disconnected things, then like things go south really, really quickly. And when I started, the company was still on product board, but there was kind of a big disconnect between product board and our Jira instance. So engineering, like there was a lot of manual copy paste, update, etc. And I know it can be automated. Like there is a pretty good integration between product board and Jira, but then you also kind of need the right people to do the integration, and there was kind of the making it happen threshold was too high. So we ended up migrating to Jira Product Discovery, which by default is like super integrated with Jira because basically the sister product. And that was super, super helpful. So we don't do the roadmap, but we make sure that everything that is in Jira Product Discovery has the right information attached to it. We have created the different views that are needed because obviously the commercial team has different needs in terms of what's happening than the engineering teams, and product leads have different needs than commercial. So we kind of make sure that everything is in one place and accessible to the level of detail that different people need it. Everybody's complaining nonetheless, but that's just that whenever there's a roadmap, people will be complaining. That's just a fact of life that I've come to accept.
If they're not complaining, you're probably not doing it right, because you're giving everyone what they want, which means you'll never deliver it.
Correct. That is very true.
You've got to make some hard choices, which means there are going to be people who aren't happy.
And estimates are wrong always anyways. I'll always add at least a quarter.
We could get into a philosophical debate of whether they should have timing on a roadmap. I think in some contexts you should, in some you shouldn't. I'm currently working out what the road mapping philosophy should be for the team I'm in.
It's a very difficult thing because specifically, like there are some sales, like if as a salesperson you are selling the tool that exists right now, you don't care about estimates because you are selling what is there. And then if there's another great thing coming around the corner, cool, like you have an upgrade or whatever upsell option 6 months from now, great. But if you're selling the future, then it's a problem because you kind of have to say when the future is going to be delivered, because otherwise your potential customer won't buy the future. So I think whether you need estimates or not depends, unfortunately, on the sales strategies, which is something that as a product manager or a product operations person, you have zero influence over. Unless you want to go into sales enablement and like reteach people on the sales side how to sell.
Yeah, I don't think I'd agree with zero power, but I think it's a hard fight in some organizations.
And so then the question is, okay, like we are selling the future. In our case, we are migrating people. So obviously the people who are on the old platform expect a certain level of features, service on the new platform. And not all of them may be ready right now. So obviously the salespeople have to sell the future. But then it's very different if you can tell the customer, hey, this will be ready in Q3 or in Q3 2030.
It's a constant balance of trying to give that confidence to buy. And even if I've generally found if you're talking about something that's a month down the line or 3 months or 6 months down the line, it's still a great excuse for people to not buy what they can have today. And so sometimes actually putting a timing goes against you even still. You need to know the audience. Ultimately, that's what it comes to, is your road mapping is for your audience. So we're going to start kind of bringing ourselves to a close, I think, Valentina. I always like to ask kind of 3 ish last questions. Whose advice on product operations do you listen to?
I am really, really, really bad with names, but Melissa Perry is, I discovered product operations through her book. So she has definitely had like an impressive, she has left an impression on me. And I very much go back to that book whenever I'm kind of lost, basically, to find like new ideas and see how else could I look at this. And so like her podcast is also one of the few that I actually relatively regularly listen to. And then whenever her name pops up, I'm like, oh, there's interesting. So fangirl for Melissa Perry.
Well, Melissa and Denise are both also guests on this season.
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to that episode. The other person who has actually been quite interesting to me is Petra Wille.
Yeah, no, Petra Welch, she was in the first season.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, because, and I mean, she's not product operations, but I really, really like her very humanistic style. And like, you can learn a lot about product operations and how to kind of support people, not just on a human level, but also on a process level. Bad word. From from her teachings or from her book. So those two are probably my favorites.
Yeah, in fact, I keep meaning to read the next book, the products communities book that she co-wrote, because I think that could be an interesting one for us internally. I always like to ask people towards the end if they had to distill their philosophy on product operations down to 1 or 2 sentences, what would it be?
We solve problems. You feel stuck? We're going to find a way to unstuck you. You being the product manager.
I love how succinct and how direct that is. We've talked about a lot of things and we've gone down some interesting rabbit holes. Is there anything I should have asked you about product operations that I haven't?
Something, and I don't even know if that is really a question, but something that I'm thinking a lot about lately is how much the buy-in from product managers, because it's usually not the product managers who request somebody from product operations to come in. But it's basically, usually it's leadership or it's the head of product who needs like somebody who helps them out. But then that person ends up actually working more with the product managers than with that leader, or impacts the work of the product manager in almost a disproportionate way. And like one of the questions, and I don't have a good answer about this, like how do you get people to row into the same direction if they didn't, like if you were suddenly in that, like you're there and now you're like, okay, we all have to row in this rhythm, and everybody's like, well, I've never rowed in this rhythm. Oh, I thought we have a motor. Isn't this a sailboat? Like, how do you actually streamline all of this? And I'm still in the, like, I don't have a definite answer for that, but I think it's an interesting question to ask, like different people, like how do you influence more than direct?
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic kind of change management problem, I guess, because change managers are brought in when something's to be changed, and actually the people that look to be changed often feel like they're being criticized, and the product managers in this case maybe feel like they're being criticized because they're not doing it quite so well or quite in the way that has been asked for, and therefore could create that rearguard action, that kind of fight against the change.
Yeah, and also like with like this whole analysis, like one of the things, for example, that I love to do is sitting down with a product manager and go through their calendar to see where their time goes. But getting the balance right between I'm here to help you figure out how we can save time. Like, I don't want to rationalize you away. I just want to get rid of 3 meetings for you so that you can actually talk to more customers. But like this fear that somebody is coming in because, and then I'm going to lose my job and I'm going to be under the bridge and then I die. Like that's kind of where the human brain goes to directly. Like that is an interesting balancing act.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, very human one.
But that is the challenge for the future. How can we put more humanity in work given that everything is becoming AI? I think the human touch will be kind of the differentiator in the future.
I agree. And so it sounds like product ops you see as an enabler for that.
And I wish I had the budget to get everybody together at least once a year on site to like work on some challenges together, role-playing customer interviews, like things that you can do in person. So having dinner with wine together to kind of create this personal connection that can then take you over the next 6 months. And I think it's a very underutilized and not very expensive way to actually create motivation and create collaboration and create kind of this companionship that you don't necessarily have if you're not in the same office.
Yeah, it's an often overlooked part of remote patterns. One of the things I talked about when COVID hit was how one of the things that enabled people to go remote so quickly was because existing relationships were frozen in place that had been built in person. Like one of my classic onboarding techniques in my previous life was to take someone on a mini tour of the entire business, the entire team, and introduce them personally, one-on-one to each individual, and tell them a little bit about each other to boot up that relationship quickly, because it was so much easier to work together after that point.
Yep. And every single fully remote company that is successful has regular meetups. And that's something that is often overlooked. Remote does not mean you are never, ever allowed to see any human being ever again. It means, okay, we're going to meet in these contained boxes for a week every 4 to 6 months. Because then you have enough kind of human connection, human bonding that you can survive the next 4 months. Because you know who's sarcastic, you know who has a dry humor, who knows who's like always has anxiety through the roof and needs a little bit more calm down. Because you've like lived with them for 4 days in an Airbnb or whatever, or in a hotel. But if you never meet, it's very easy to conflate the avatar with the enemy, because you kind of forget that it's actually also a human being with a pet and 15 plants that likes white wine. No cat here, but yes to the white wine.
Valentina, it's been absolutely wonderful chatting today. It's probably time for us to wrap up for the day. It's been absolutely wonderful having you here. As I say, thank you again for your time.
You're very welcome. It was fun. I love talking to you.